Und gleich.
Und gleich?
Peter Greenaway beherrscht alle filmischen Formen. Und das zeigt uns gleich im Kurzfilmmagazin.
Freitag?
Was suchen zwei Japaner bloß im tiefsten Jura?
Wo wohnt dieser Hund? Der Hund, der singen kann.
Sie suchen singende Hunde, fremde Bräuche und das Glück. Das Geheimnis des singenden Hundes. Freitag, 20:40 Uhr.
Samstag?
Es ist fast wie ein Wunder. 32.000 Jahre lang haben sie auf uns gewartet. Die Malereien in der Höhle von Chauvet. John Berger erzählt uns ihre Geschichte. Die Geschichte der Menschheit. Samstag um 20:45 Uhr. Uns nun hinein ins Kurzfilmabenteuer. In Kurzschluss.
Arte.
Kurzschluss. Kurzfilm. Kurzschluss. Das Magazin. Heute das Peter Greenaway Special mit Filmen, Gesprächen und Analysen. Wir zeigen die Kurzfilme Windows und 26 Bathrooms. Peter Greenaway hat gerade seinen neuen Film The Tall Super Suitcases abgedreht. Wir trafen in Amsterdam einen sehr entspannten Künstler.
Die meisten werden seine langen Filme kennen, wie etwa Der Kontrakt des Zeichners oder Der Koch, der Dieb, seine Frau und ihr Liebhaber. Greenaways Stärke ist es, seine eigenen Geschichten intelligent zu sezieren und vor allem visuell zu argumentieren. Seinen Filmen gibt er eine katalogisierende Struktur und greift dabei häufig auf Buchstaben und Zahlen zurück. Der Kurzfilm ist für ihn eine eigene Form, die er von Anfang an liebevoll gepflegt hat. Und das kann dazu führen, dass zum Beispiel sein längster Film, The Falls, wiederum aus 92 Kurzfilmen besteht.
So I don't really see a great difference, really, between the notion of making a feature film and making a short film. It's relative to the idea, relative to the obsession, relative to the fascination. And then, I don't know, this sounds maybe rather sort of privileged, but only afterwards relative to a funding situation. But there is a way that often the notion of the feature film can be like a prison because it has certain demands. It has to be approximately 120 minutes long. There's an obligation to use actors. There's a script organization facility phenomenon involved. But short films obviously are cheaper, can be done in a much more sort of unorthodox way. They're much more open to experiment. And that's ideal for me. And it has to be said, some ideas aren't simply worth spending 120 minutes. You know, 5 minutes is more than enough. And to overextend that is to spoil the idea. And there are lots and lots of links between a feature film and a short film. Sometimes a short film was created simply because there wasn't space to put the ideas in a feature film. And also the opposite could occur. I tend to be very wary of the proposition that film is a good narrative medium. I think if you want to tell stories, be an author. It's much more satisfactory. And if that's the basis, then I would often try to use non-narrative structures in a lot of my movie making. This is true of the shorts as well as the feature films. So I've ended up, and this is, I suppose, a name I've accrued to my own activity, I feel that I am a cataloger. I'm a catalogue filmmaker. I think probably just as my own character would be very much to do with rationality and collating and classifying and organizing. At heart, I suppose I'm a clerk. I like shuffling disparate materials together and finding a structure. So in form, in terms of actual strategy, I think there's a way I've been allowed to experiment incredibly with the short films, which have ultimately become the format in which the long films have been organized.
Sehen und hören Sie gleich. Peter Greenaways Sehkraft lässt nach. Droht gar Erblindung? Folgen Sie dem Regisseur auf verschlungenen Pfaden. Geht Peter Greenaway nach Hollywood?
Und jetzt der Film Windows aus dem Jahr 1974. Länge 4 Minuten mit einer kleinen Einführung von Peter Greenaway.
Windows is a film which started with a political background. I was curious, being a political animal when I was a young man, like we all are, about the conditions of the black people in apartheid South Africa. People were mysteriously falling out of windows, obviously being pushed. I could not in any way visit South Africa to promote or continue that particular idea, so I picked it up in an entirely different English melancholy setting of the rural countryside in Wiltshire, which I visited quite frequently, an area of countryside which I've made many films about. And what was originally meant to be a sort of gritty documentary about a horrific social problem became an elegiac essay about the English countryside associated with a dream, I suppose, of all civilizations, a dream of a wish to fly.
Peter Greenaway macht Filme, malt, organisiert Ausstellungen und schreibt Theaterstücke. Wie sieht er sich selbst als Künstler?
Well, maybe I could start by saying that I started my career off as a painter and certainly still believe that painting is always at the cutting edge of all cultural ideas, certainly in the Western world. I think it's because I don't really regard myself as a filmmaker. The idea of a job description which says filmmaker doesn't seem to satisfy what I want to do. But I mean, my career has been a total failure because I never wanted to be a filmmaker at all. I wanted to be a painter. So I suppose my whole sort of situation in the cinema, having been trained as a painter initially, is to get people to look. If you think about human culture in the West, we're all trained to be incredibly sophisticated in handling text. When we're kids, we learn the alphabet. We're force-fed words. Through our adolescence, we put the sentences together. And when we're adults, we never finish learning how to handle text, both spoken text and also written text. We're very, very sophisticated at handling text. But let me ask you a question. Are we sophisticated at handling images? But it is true that when you look at a painting, certain sorts of reactions are brought into play. By and large, I've never seen anybody cry or laugh in front of a painting. But I particularly like the sort of relationship of a viewer and a painting because it is, or tends to be cerebral, it tends to be intellectual, it tends to be contemplative. And I suppose in my 25 years of making films, I've tried to get that sort of activity, the way you look at paintings, to encourage people to look at cinema in the same way. We need a cinema which is image-based and not text-based, where the images create the structure. In my early days, what I was determined to do was to let the pictures dictate. And if I could jump on my polemical soapbox, and I would say we haven't seen any cinema yet. All we've seen is 107 years of illustrated text. I do not feel that cinema has satisfactorily separated itself from literature. But I would also argue very seriously that cinema is not an adjunct to the bookshop. If you take, for example, the current situation in September 2002, the biggest marketable products in the Western world in cinema have all been taken from books. The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man came from a comic. But isn't this a disastrous situation? If we want an autonomous, self-supporting cinema, all we've got here is illustrated books.
Bleiben Bleiben Sie dran. Sehen Sie, wie es gleich ums Ganze geht. Geh wie Greenaway, geh wie Gefühl. Und entgeht der beliebte Regisseur dem feigen Attentat?
Was machen Engländer in ihren Badezimmern? Der Film 26 Bathrooms aus dem Jahr 1985 gibt viele Antworten und Peter Greenaway eine Einleitung.
26 Bathrooms, I suppose I was already developing my vocabulary and was deliberately meant to be an ironic film about what the English did in their bathrooms, not just simply taking a bath or masturbating, but all the other things that they did, even maybe including their library or doing cooking in the bathroom, whatever else. The bathroom, I suppose, as a fulcrum for domestic life. And I structured it very simply on the alphabet. Some of the numbers, some of the letters, of course, are very, very self-evident, but some of them are a little more curiously elliptic. So we play games with the alphabetical structure as well. I have an interesting anecdote. J is for jacuzzi. Necessarily, people take their clothes off, and we made an advertisement in the newspaper for a man and a woman to come and take a jacuzzi, a comparatively rare event, a jacuzzi, I think, in England at that time. Man and a woman came along to spend their time naked together in a bath. Man came by bicycle, the woman came by bus, I think. They had great trepidation taking their dressing gowns off to prepare themselves to be naked in front of the camera. But 9 months later, I was invited to the christening of their son.